Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Perfect RIA Podcast, What Works Wednesday edition. I'm your host, Matthew Jarvis, and with me today is Brad Wales. And I'm trying to think, Brad, the best way to introduce you. I see a lot of your work on LinkedIn. You do a lot of work helping advisors understand the pros and cons of rolling out into the independent space. But tell us a little bit about what you do, and then we'll jump into today's game show.
Yeah, the quick pitch. And by the way, I'll compliment you and Micah. We're all believers in putting out a lot of content, so that's probably what you've seen over time. I do believe in putting out a lot of content, helping the community. Subscribe to the Kitces theory of you put out the majority of it for free. I know you guys chatted a little while back on your show and talked about that topic. So in my case, the name of the firm that I'm started Transition to RIA started it a couple of years ago. As you can tell by the name, pretty descriptive. I do one thing and one thing only. That is help liberate advisors that are at some other environment, perhaps a bank channel, a wirehouse, a broker-dealer, whatnot, that want to move into the RIA model and all the steps involved in that and helping them kind of understand the options and how to get from point A to point B. And it's particularly relevant, I would say, because listeners to your podcast that hear you guys talk about all these wonderful things you can be doing and the services you can provide and how to structure things. There's inevitably a lot of advisors out there that are not yet in that model that have the flexibility to do those things. And there's probably a good amount of envy listening to some of what you talk about. So I help those folks get over the promised land.
I love that. I've started, Brad. There's a large firm that you obviously know, I won't name, that I've had a lot of advisors say, hey, our firm's compliance won't approve one of your value adds. They keep saying that it's illegal, that the SEC doesn't allow it. And I say, well, that's really funny because like our compliance attorneys say that they're totally fine. And so for a while I would go back and forth with them. And then I finally said, hey, listen, the only discussion I'm having after this one is how you leave your broker dealer. Like if they're that belligerent about this compliance issue, we don't need to have any more discussions about it. We should talk about leaving.
Yep. No, and then we're going to talk about some of them today. Countless stories of where that's a pain point for sure.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited about today's episode, Brad, one, just because I enjoy your work, but also we're going to try a little bit of a game out here today. As those of you that follow Brad and myself, we're sort of outspoken advocates for being in the RIA space. But today we're going to list off back and forth reasons to stay at your broker-dealer. So not what we would normally talk about, but we're going to have some fun, a little like Jimmy Fallon style here of reasons you should stay with your broker-dealer. So Brad, curious if you want to kick us off.
Sure. I have. I came prepared with my list. Like we probably should have had some sort of neutral judge to keep score here. So for the listeners playing along, we'll let you decide ultimately who comes up with the best examples. But I think all of the things we'll bring up, we can both add something to. So yeah, would love to kick it off. And so and in the phrasing we might use with this, that you should stay at a broker dealer if you like the fact that you might be trusted to have discretionary authority on your clients' accounts, but you're not trusted enough to send an email to all those clients at once explaining why you made a trade with your discretionary authority. So,
man, you're coming right at the gates. I love this. So if you have discretionary authority to trade on conceivably tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, but you can't email the client because maybe you just don't want to be trusted with email, but I think that's really the thing. Like you're trusted to trade, you're not trusted with email, then you should probably stay at a broker dealer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know what the magic number is nowadays. It's more than 10 clients at a time or whatever the compliance number is that it has to be reviewed. And so, yeah, you go from trading tens or hundreds of millions of dollars, but yet you're not trusted to send that email explaining why you did that. So I think it's pretty good reason. If that's your thing, broker dealer's your home.
There's your home. Okay. Well, let's see if I can rival that one. If you're not creative and you don't enjoy booking your own travel and you would rather travel with a group of strangers to a generic resort location, you should probably stay with a broker dealer.
Yeah, indeed. Now, I'll tell you though, that one sticks with some folks. There are some of these kind of reward trips and things that I've seen where the economics, someone's at a broker dealer and they could go on like a reward trip where it's all picked for them. And the economics say, hey, you would make potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars more in the RIA model, but you're holding on to that $10,000 reward trip or whatnot. And you see it. So to your point, that's a good reason to stay.
Oh, I've got one to piggyback on it, but it's your turn. It's your turn. So for those of you listening, by the way, we'll post this episode on LinkedIn the same day it airs, and so you can go on there and put your votes in for which ones you like the best and who you think won. All right, Brad, your turn.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we'll probably should go back and forth because I'd be surprised if we don't have some overlap here. So if I don't get
I'm sure we will. Yeah,
if I don't get in my good ones, it will be it'll be frustrating. So next, no particular order, and for those that are particularly a larger broker dealer can relate to this. You might want to stay at a broker dealer if you like having to get your political donations approved by the home office. So for those of you that are in that boat, and there is a good reason, right? There's a good reason they have to do it. Doesn't mean you have to stay in that situation, but typically for any advisors that have not dealt with that, if you're at a large broker dealer that has, it's typically tied to because they have a municipal bond operation, yes. And if they're trying to drum up business from the local or state level, whatever the case is, there could be critiques of pay to play if there you are someone that's donating. Now, mind you, most advisors have absolutely nothing to do with the municipal bond desk, have nothing to do with any of that, yet have to get it approved. And so I experienced that. I've been licensed or was licensed for many years, but it was more in that kind of corporate home office role at a large broker dealer. And the funny thing with my experience, and I'm not politically active too much in that sense, but years ago I wanted to give, it was like $100 to someone. I don't even remember who it was. And so I'd go through the process, and it turns out the guy at the firm that approved it, and I actually knew him, he was a friend of mine, but the irony was he was Canadian. He was a Canadian citizen that happened to be working here. So I would always think to myself, wait, so I can't donate money unless I get permission from a guy that's not even a citizen here has to tell me that this is okay to do or not. So if you like that sort of thing, stay put at the broker dealer. So
it's a convenient excuse to not support your friends that are running for office. Where you say, hey, "Listen, I'm really sorry. I could just never get approval."
The Canadian will not give me the approval, so I can't donate. Yeah. All right, back to you.
All right, this one feels like a softball, but I got to put it out here anyway. If you feel like you're making too much money, probably stick with the broker dealer. Like, let them keep taking that override. A good friend of mine, he's paying like $600,000 a year in overrides to the BD. And so if you can't figure out how to spend all that money, if you just don't like making that much, if you like overpaying your tax, like that group, solid choice. Stay with the broker dealer.
And that one's a dagger, man. That one's you came low on that one, but
yeah,
the math, and particularly the larger the practice, that math starts to get very very uncomfortable. And so yeah, to the degree you like giving it to the man at the broker dealer, stay put. All right, next up, you should stay at a broker dealer if you like having to get your outside business activities approved. And so I know you talk about all the different things you can do as an RIA and the options of maybe add-in services. And so I know that was always a frustration, that you'd have to get things that are not even remotely securities related. You want to sell Girl Scout cookies for a profit, you have to, as a grown individual that's been in the industry for a while, you have to get permission from someone else to do that. In an interesting example, and there's a gazillion of them, but I won't name the firm, but a large wirehouse firm recently, there was a guy, an advisor, and he got fired. Now, rules are rules. You got to follow the rules.
For sure.
He did not disclose the business, so that's on him. But it was some sort of like salt business. Like I don't even know. He's in the business of hawking commercial grade salt or something like that. Has nothing to do with anything to do with being a financial advisor. He didn't disclose it, and he gets fired for it. And if that's your thing, if you like having to get completely unrelated ways to make money in life approved by your firm, then absolutely you want to stay at a broker dealer.
Oh, I like that one. That's a good one. Here's another one. I've got a funny story to go with. But if you like the idea that someone else is reading all of your emails, stay at a broker dealer. And funny story, once in my life, I was at a very small insurance-owned broker dealer. I happened to know the compliance department chief, and because there was only one person there, we were getting pretty good friends. And so I would start sending emails to my wife, and I'd say, honey, I guarantee that we are going to have a great night tonight. And they'd call me. It's like, Jarvis, you know that anytime you write guarantee, like I get flagged on that email.
Oh, fantastic.
Right? So I'm like, guaranteed we're going to have a great rate of return on our date tonight. And he's like, quit. Stop that. Please stop that.
Oh, gosh, that is fantastic. Yeah, guaranteed. I didn't think about that. And I'm actually embarrassed I did not have that one on my list. That is The email review is an absolute requirement to have on the list. So I came up short, but I will come right back and say you equally like having your social media monitored by Big Brother. And so if you want to use, Twitter or LinkedIn or whatever, typically broker dealers now, there was a time you kind of got away with it because they didn't really have the mechanism. But now if you at all are going to use them for any sort of business thing, that has to get piped through there. And so the reality is you got to think if you're in that situation that your maybe, teenage kid has more freedom with social media than you do because Big Brother's always watching what you post. I remember I'm not really active on Twitter, but was a little bit at one point. And I remember I think I used the term like Super Bowl. I was calling something like, oh, that's the Super Bowl of conferences or something like that. And I remember it kicked it out, rejected it, automatically deleted it. Of course, I had no say because apparently I guess it's a copyrighted term. You can't use it. And so I was, of course, just using it to describe something.
Yeah, as a metaphor, yeah.
And so it was more the principle of the fact that, okay, I am a grown individual here, just putting out a tweet, and Big Brother took it, literally just deleted it. So if that's your thing, stay put. But I think you got me for the scorekeepers. I think email takes over my social media.
Social media is a good. Oh, here's a little bit more of a serious one. So this one's not as funny as some, but I'd be curious your thoughts, Brad. And that is, you should stay at the broker dealer if you really enjoy what we used to call the good old boys club, right? If you enjoy getting up there and being acknowledged for being the 27th producer of whatnot. And so kind of we say that tongue in cheek, but Brad, I'm curious. I know you must run into this because I hear it all the time. Like, hey, this is my community. This is my family. Like, I love to go see these same guys or gals every conference. Yep. What do you talk to advisors on that?
Well, and I'll tell you exactly where I saw that, and presumably it still happens. I'm out of that world, but and broker dealers do this on purpose. They do bring you up on the stage, and hey, yep. if you've had some great success, there's certainly nothing wrong with that. But they know while they're doing that, and then typically they involve spouses in that process because then the spouses get to know each other. And so even if you want to move on, even if you don't care about the big trip or the walk across stage, well, your spouse over the years has got to know another spouse. And so that's all calculated. They know full well that they pay for spouses to go to those sorts of things because they want the spouses to be the glue that keeps someone from leaving, even if the economics make way more sense. And by the way, you can still go on trips with those same people. You just take all your savings and you could pay for their trip too if you wanted. So yeah. That absolutely happens. And they're doing it strategically,
Yeah, for sure. I know we had Michael Henley on the show the other day, and he rolled out of Merrill Lynch a few years ago, and he talked about that. He said, boy, at Merrill, they have these really tight-knit communities, again, Brad, to your point, for that purpose. And that is definitely something that has not yet fully developed in the independent space.
Yeah, and correct. I would agree with that. But I also think, and look at your podcast, there was a time there was no podcast. There was no community. And so you've built up a community of people that don't even know each other, but they could get in a room and start talking about everything on the Perfect RIA podcast. And that didn't exist at one point. So I think those barriers are coming down, but there is still some of it. And so you have to decide, is that good old boy network have enough value to you, or can you find, that community elsewhere? And so I'd give it a couple more years. I think it keeps decreasing in importance every year or so.
Yep, for sure. So I guess mine is then if you have a hard time making new friends, you probably stay at the broker dealer.
Yes, that's one way to put it. It's interesting. It's almost like the right with the criticism of like fraternities and sororities. Oh, you're paying to have your friends. So when you're put up on stage by the same people, do you actually, do you like those people because of who they are, or is it just because you all happen to be, a top tier, advisor and that's how you're by default friends? So choose wisely, I guess.
I love it. All right, I think it's your turn.
Yeah, back to me. Let's see. Oh, this one is kind of harsh. And different firms might approach this differently, but I'll give you a real life example. So if you like the fact that you have to ask permission from your firm to add an advisor to your team, and by the way, they might deny you, you might want to stay at a broker dealer. And so I'll give you an example. I won't name the names, but an advisor, pretty tenured in the industry, got, I don't know, 5 years left kind of thing, wanted to bring in his now adult son into the business. The firm has a nepotism policy that does not allow that. And so there was no skeletons in the closet with the father. There's no skeleton closet with the son. They just said, we do not allow that. So the answer is you cannot bring that advisor into your office, or that you cannot bring your son as an advisor into your office. That's, of course, madness. And
Wow.
you can imagine his reaction. So if you like the fact that you'd like to add somebody into your team and you have to ask someone else's permission if they're okay with that, then by all means, stay put at the broker-dealer.
Boy, Brad, I had a story related. I had an advisor contact me, and he was getting hired, been offered to get hired into a team at a large broker dealer. We won't name the name. And he said, it's great, Jarvis. This guy's going to hire me. He's going to start turning over all his clients to me. And I said, you need to get that in writing from the broker dealer, because they're not going to let him turn over clients to this rookie person. Like, they have a system in place, and it's not you, my friend. and sure enough, that's what it turned out to be. Like, he and the advisor both thought, like, this is my book of business. I can turn it over to whoever I want. No, that is not how that works.
Yeah, no, unfortunately not. And you might think it is, and then you don't know right up until that point where all of a sudden you realize it. And by that point, who knows if you can pivot still. So that's that one hits hard. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, here's my next one. If you take motivation that your firm has an entire department designed to back the bus over you, stay with the broker dealer.
Please do tell. Please do tell. Wow, that's
Well, so I have a friend. He's retired from a large broker dealer. His wife worked for the same broker dealer, and her job, Brad, was literally anytime they fired an advisor, she flew to that town, took over his office, and ran it until they got somebody in his or her office. That was her job. Every Monday she'd wake up and they'd say, "Guess what? You're going to, Toledo, Ohio. We just fired a guy. Take over the practice."
Wow,
that was her job.
Parachute in, yeah. So it doesn't matter if you were loyal to that firm for 20 years and were never complained and generated them a lot of revenue. You walk out that door, the parachute's coming. Yeah, I've heard of. So I've not heard of that of boots on the ground, but I've definitely heard of. They response squads, whatever they want to call them. That it is immediately start trying to. Call out to someone's client. So I think a broker dealer does have at some point, I don't think it's within 2 hours of someone walking out the door. At some point, they do have responsibility. That account until and if it's ACAT'd out, it is sitting there. They have some responsibility. Sure. But there's, I think, a lot of disingenuous explanations given as to like, oh, well, we don't know where Brad went. He walked out of here, and they know full well where maybe that departed advisor went. And so that is awfully frustrating. And yeah, to see that happening after people have been there a very long time is absolutely unfortunate. So,
yeah. Obviously, that's not, and the jokes we're making are not applicable to every single firm. And if you think we're talking specifically about your firm as a listener, we're not, only for legal reasons.
Yep.
But these are all things we've seen. These aren't like hypotheticals we're making up here.
Yeah, no, not at all. And there's no reason to name names, and because they are unique circumstances. But yeah, everything we've been listing are applicable to some firms, and so as an advisor listening out there, you just say, hey, is that how it would work at my firm, kind of thing. So all right, back to me. I only got a couple more, but I will go with here's one, and this, even for folks that are at an independent broker dealer that you do own that client relationship. If you were to leave, you can take the clients with you. However, if you like the idea that while you're still there, and particularly if you're using a proprietary CRM and performance report, if you like the idea of building up years of client data, again, in CRM data or performance reporting, and you like the idea that you build up years of that, and when you leave, you likely can't take all of that with you. It's not because the firm doesn't want to let you. They might, even an independent broker dealer might say, hey, yeah, we're okay with it. But the reality is, if it's a proprietary system, the ability to port that data is, rough at best, if at even possible. So if you like committing yourself to one particular firm, even if you think you're independent, that's the way to do is to stay put on that one. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that one of what you.
When you made the
move.
That actually kind of parlayed into one of mine, which is if you really love old, outdated, unreliable technology, stay at a broker dealer. Yeah, there's a lot of proprietary stuff. I had a friend, Brad, that was in data analytics for a major broker dealer, and his department programmed all the analytics that could detect if you were thinking about leaving the broker dealer, and then they would just cut you off. If they thought, like, if you're accessing too many records, if you're starting to download things, they knew that was a sign that you were trying to jump ship.
Wow,
and they would start looking at that.
I have not heard that. I've heard of you kind of forensics after the fact. Someone will leave, they'll go in and look at the print logs, and there is right. This is what I talk to advisors. There is a choreographed process you have to follow. You have to play by the rules. You don't want to do things that'll get you in trouble. And your firm, and again, with varying degrees of urgency, will absolutely look at things. And so I've always heard it kind of after the fact. It's that's the first I've heard of. It does not surprise me that there might be active eyeballs looking, and that's a shame, right? That's just kind of a reminder that, wow, we don't even trust you. There's loyalty is not both ways, so that's unfortunate. I know we're ribbing it, but at the end of the day, that is unfortunate that they're doing that.
This is a good reminder, not, Brad, to put a shameless plug in for you, but for advisors, don't let these things scare you from considering. Like, don't think that, hey, this means I can't leave, but it does mean you need to follow the rules very carefully. Brad, you mentioned a choreographed procedure. This is where you reach out to someone like Brad and say, I'm thinking about this. You reach out from your personal email account, right, out to Brad and say, hey, can we talk? Can we do an engagement? What are my options here? So you really want to be educated on this. If only, and here's going to be another one of mine, if you're comfortable with the idea that somebody else's mistakes can jeopardize your practice. So my office manager's been with me for 10 years. She previously worked at a broker dealer. They did some bad due diligence. They had a proprietary product go sideways, blew up the whole firm. And then everyone was scrambling, trying to find new broker dealers. And then the lawsuits were going out to everybody, right? Because the attorneys say, like, we found one bad, let's go after everybody. So you need to know what your options are.
Yeah, indeed. And a kind of related tale. I heard once an exec once said, he said, particularly if you're a smaller broker dealer, not to scare people, but he always said, never fully expect your last paycheck from that firm. Meaning, if they got in hot water and things went bad, whatever that last amount of money still due you for your quarterly fees or whatever might not be there. Now that's a pretty extreme example, but it in a worst case scenario, that literally can happen. Yeah, and by the way, I appreciate the plug there. But a moment ago, what I tell people is, moving into the RIA models, it's not rocket science. It's just if all you've ever lived is perhaps in a wirehouse firm, why would you necessarily know what these steps are and the solutions available to you and all that? And so, don't be intimidated by it. There's thousands of advisors have come before. It's just a matter of kind of knowing what the process is. And again, that's a shameless plug, but that's what I help people with. So.
No. That's why we're glad to have you, right? This podcast is all about doing what works. And so it's nice to talk to somebody who's like, all right, I've guided people through this. This isn't what I imagine that's going to happen. It's not what the compliance department told me is going to happen. Here's what really happens.
Yep. No, appreciate that. All right. I got, I'm only two, but I'm only going to, one is the, across the board, if you like being supervised to lowest common denominator, right? We could go back and forth on that. Is what it is. I always say, if you're at a firm, oftentimes people complain about compliance a lot, and I often point out it's generally not it's generally not a problem with the firm or like bad people running the firm. It's just a structural problem. So if it's you and 10,000 other advisors at the firm, and they got to manage the lowest common denominator, everyone's heard that tale before. I don't need to explain it. That it is what it is. You are going to have tighter guardrails than are perhaps necessary than if you were to go on your own. So there is no fix to that. If there's you and 10,000 advisors, they have to corral everyone somehow. And as you get more tenured, more experienced, you're going to be held to the same guardrails as the lesser experienced people. So it's unfortunately an evergreen item there. Yeah.
Totally is. All right, but the last one I had, Brad, and then you can come in for the kill at the end, was you should probably stay at your broker dealer if you believe in the boogeyman under your bed. And what I mean by that is, we're always told, or when you're in the broker dealer model, you're always told that the compliance will eat you alive if you leave. That as soon as you leave, the SEC will audit you. You'll be on your own with FINRA, whatever the case may be, the state insurance commissioners, whatever that is. And so we kind of create this fear of, like, there's this enormous boogeyman under the bed, and if you leave the broker dealer, the boogeyman will eat you. And so if you like believing that story, and you don't want to look under the bed, then you should probably stay at the broker-dealer.
My last one, I'm going to skip because that's a great one to end on. And I think that, right, if you are a branch manager at one of these large firms, or you're a regional manager, or whatever, your objective is to try to scare those advisors that it is going to be this horrible path, that you are going to get overwhelmed, that, oh my gosh, the SEC is going to come in and oh, you're going to be so unprepared. And look, I'm a big believer saying there's two sides to the coin. There's pros and cons. A lot more flexibility in the RIA model, but as you know, you do have certain responsibilities that arguably you don't have necessarily sitting in a broker-dealer environment. And then the question, just for any advisor, say, okay, do those better economics, better flexibility far outweigh the additional responsibilities that would come with it? And that's just something for any advisor to think through. But anytime you hear those stories, you do have to ask yourself, well, why is it there's thousands upon thousands of advisors that are successfully managing their own RIA if this is such a horrible thing? And so it does come to that education of, at a minimum, just understand how it works. Maybe it's not for you, and it's not for everyone. The RIA model is not for everyone. But how do you know if the grass is greener or not? And maybe the grass is greener in your own front yard. You don't need to make a change. But if you don't learn more about it, and again, that's self-serving for me to point out because that's what I help people figure out. But if you don't take the time to learn more about it, you don't listen to a podcast like yours to hear about it, well, you might as well just sit there and listen to those boogeymen, because you're never going to know any different. So
I love that. Well, Brad, I think that's a great one to end on. This podcast is all about taking action. So, Brad, I'm curious if there's any action items that come to mind for our advisor friends on the broker-dealer world, or even our advisor friends on the RIA independent world. Just any action items that come to mind based on your experience.
Yes, I'll give one for the broker-dealer world. So again, I get asked often, what is the number one thing that prevents people from moving to the RIA world? And the answer every single time is inertia. So it does take time to figure out. It's not a fun process. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's a lot of work. But once you're on the other side, I've never heard anyone that ever said they regretted doing it. So from an action item, I would just tell anyone that's listening that, and if you're listening to this podcast, you obviously have some interest. If you're not already in that RIA space, something has intrigued you, something has excited you about it. But if you're not taking action, ask yourself why that is. So I would just say, give yourself a time frame. 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is, and say, I am going to at least take steps to learn more about what this would mean for my practice and what it would take to get there. Whether it's talk to me or search other things, whatever it is, there's no reason you can't do that. Maybe it's for you, maybe it's not, but you can at least take time to learn more. So that would be my takeaway, is pick a time limit. Don't just say, this year or next year, 3 months, whatever the time is, and stick to it.
Yeah, well, let's pin that one down just a little bit more. So I'm not 100% sure when this podcast airs, but let's say that whatever it airs, that by the end of this year, by the end of 2022, every advisor listening needs to have a written game plan, not written at your office, right at your house. Yeah. Talk to Brad, talk to whomever, have a written game plan that says, if I needed to leave, or if I wanted to leave, right, for all these reasons we joked about, if I wanted to leave, what would that process look like? And if you look at it and you say, you know what, actually, Jarvis and Brad can joke about this. I love the BD model. I'm staying here. Perfect. Good for you. Tuck that away with your first aid kit, your emergency supplies, and have that. Yep. Brad, an action item I would give to our RIA friends: do not rest on your laurels thinking, oh, the BD guys have it so bad and we have it scot-free. The SEC issued again that they are very focused on misbilling. That if you're doing manual calculation of your billing, if your billing fee schedule does not match exactly what's in your ADV, they are coming down on that with a ton of bricks. I've had SEC exams. They pull all of our billing files. They do all of their own calculations. If you are lax on this at all, they will hang you out to dry. And I do, in fact, Brad, know we can have this for another episode. I know an RIA right now, he's doing federal prison time for misbilling. He misbilled by several $1 million.
I might know who that is. We're not going to name names, but I might know who that is.
We probably know. We had money with his TAMP at one point. Luckily, I had pulled out of that. He, according to him, in his defense, it was an Excel error. According to the SEC and the FBI, because of the dollar amount the FBI got involved, and they said, no, we don't care what this was. You stole millions of dollars, and you're in jail now. So don't think that just because we're on this side, we're somehow out of jail free.
Yep. Nope. Well, and again, there are responsibilities. You have to take them seriously. Now, the wonderful thing is, particularly over the last 5-10 years, is the ecosystem, the RIA ecosystem has evolved to the point where there are if anything, so many solutions to choose from of how to manage these. That's the bigger problem. It's not that you don't have good ways to manage things like fee bill, and it's just kind of, if anything, sorting through the solution. So yeah, absolutely take it serious. But again, don't let that scare you into digging deeper either, and saying, hey, what would that look like for me?
I love it. Well, Brad, thank you so much for being on the show today. For all of our listeners, go ahead and find this episode on LinkedIn and let us know who won or what other broker-dealer jokes you want to throw into the mix. Brad, thank you again for your time, and for everyone listening, happy planning.